Hey everybody, Christopher Moonlight here, and today we are visiting an article from The Wrap. As you can see, it's titled, Going It Alone, the Indie Filmmakers Getting Their Movies in Theaters Without a Distributor. And I'm hearing more and more about this. I'm also, full disclosure, I'm in touch with this gentleman, which is going to be spoken about here, and his name is Peter Hayaguchi. I hope apologize to you, Peter, if I'm butchering your name. I know it's a Japanese name, but anyway, I wanted to read this article and comment on it because I have been having discussions with Peter about his upcoming movie, The Occult. He was at CinemaCon recently, and he got interviewed as part of this article, and he has some very interesting things to say about it. I'm also going to have him on the channel at some point soon and ask him some questions directly. So if you are an independent filmmaker or you care about independent film or movies in general, this may be of interest to you. It's certainly of interest to me, being that I make my own independent films, including The Quantum Terror, which won award this from Film Threat, and my upcoming animated movie Escape from Planet Omega 12. So let's dive in. So again, the title is Going It Alone, the Indie Filmmakers Getting Their Movies in Theaters Without a Distributor. The director of Hybrids, I'm already screwing up. The director of Hundreds of Beavers, The Occult, and Anchorage are putting their own time, sweat, and money into crafting their own theatrical releases. Double use of the word own there. Anyway, okay, so Las Vegas. Peter Hayaguchi fanned out the deck like a Vegas street magician. Pick a card, any card. It doesn't matter which one, because they all have a QR code to the trailer of his new movie, The Occult. And you can click on that hyperlink. Hayaguchi and the producers of his indie thriller, which follows a man who gets caught up in an underground supernatural conspiracy, brought the cards to CinemaCon last month to pitch the movie directly to theater owners with the goal of bringing the film to their screens. So as I understand it, the amount of movies that Hollywood is putting out at the moment has been vastly reduced, and movie theaters, they don't make all of their money from ticket sales. They have to split that. What they do make their money from are concessions, foot traffic. And if there's a reduction in movies being put out, the theaters kind of maybe go into panic mode a little bit, because they are they need content. They need a steady stream of content to keep people coming in. So anyway, Hayaguchi said he received 5 offers from independent distributors to release the film on streaming and digital rental, but none were willing to go the theatrical route. So he decided to go it alone, because he believes in the value of theaters that much. This is another discussion that I had with him. I don't discount the value of video on demand. I don't think its full potential has been realized for indie filmmakers, but I certainly am on the same page with him with getting movies into theaters. I think if we can, before it was impossible. So anyway, let's continue the article. Every filmmaker wants their movie in a theater, but I think it's been kind of beaten out of most of them, especially independent filmmakers, Hayaguchi told The Wrap. Their expectations become much lower than their desires. Their film is not going to make it to theaters. They're lucky if it gets into Netflix. With The Quantum Terror, it was a first-time film. It wasn't shot to be shown in theaters. The quality wasn't good enough for the screen. So there's going to be a lot of indie filmmakers like that, first-time film, just kind of getting their feet wet, that I think video on demand is, I thought it was more than I could ever hope for, and it's done well for me. But anyway, let's continue. For him, CinemaCon offered a different path to get the occult to the big screen. Rather than shop the film at festivals, he'd take the trailer directly to the people who owned the big screens he sought. He's not the only one. Over the past year, two other independently produced films, Mike Cheslick's silent slapstick odyssey Hundreds of Beavers, and Scott Mahone's gritty road trip drama Anchorage, have gone directly to exhibitors to make the dream of a big screen showing a reality. Their releases may be only on a few dozen or even just a small handful of screens, but the filmmakers welcome any chance to show their work in a communal setting rather than a living room, especially at a time when theaters are hungry for more films to be placed in their projectors. Also, I think, these days people do want to get out again. There is a saturation of the video on demand market. It's nice to get out. I like taking my family to the movies. It's an occasion because it is expensive. But I don't know, I've been seeing these things, and I don't know how true these are, but I've been seeing these videos of Japanese theaters. They're getting much more foot traffic because they charge less. A lot of the theaters in America, the idea is, we're getting less foot traffic, so in order to make a profit, we have to sell at a premium, overpriced sodas, overpriced popcorn. But as a result, a lot of people sneak in their snacks or, just forego it at all. But I feel like if it came at an inexpensive price, that probably could help get people back as well. But that's kind of an aside to what we're reading about here. It's a rough road, one that requires creative and focused marketing strategies and the willingness to do all the work a studio would normally do, but at a time when the once buzzing acquisition market at Sundance and other festivals has slowed down. It's an option more filmmakers find worth taking. And just to, here's Peter, in a conversation I was having with him, I think he said something like just like 15,000 submissions to Sundance. Who has time to curate all that? Film festivals, I think, I don't know enough about film festivals. I don't personally, for my budget, see any value in them, but that might change. Again, going back to the video on demand market, one of the things that, using these small distributors is that they don't give you any upfront. They don't give you any money for your movie. It's just kind of based on if it makes money, and if they're honest enough to not nickel and dime you with marketing costs so that you never get any money out of them, you're still not going to get much unless your movie really performs. One of the arguments that has been said to me is, if you go with a service for video on demand like Film Hub, they're not going to do any marketing for you because they're not a distributor. They're simply a sales platform, an aggregator. And that means that, you got to go it alone with your own marketing. But most distributors these days, it's the same thing. They'll acquire a bunch of films and kind of blast them out as one campaign, and they won't do any marketing for any of them. Just kind of see if one hits, and if one does, it pays for the rest of them. Which means they don't actually care about your movie, and they don't. Your movie's not going to get marketed with the distributor. So getting marketing, I think, is still at this point going to be the responsibility of the independent filmmaker themselves. They're going to have to pay for it or find some genius ways to market it. Peter was telling me, and it might be later on in this article, I read this the other day and I'm reading it fresh again, but he printed up little tarot cards with the QR code for his trailer, and I think that said that in there. And he went around to all like the college dorms, a lot of places, and he left the tarot cards outside of the doors, which when you open up your door and you see a tarot card, that's kind of creepy. But then when you look at it and you see that it's a movie, you go like, oh, okay. So my understanding is he's going to be touring around that movie to do some free showings to kind of get reactions, record audiences, and use that for the advertising campaign for when he shows his movie in theaters in the fall, which I might be getting ahead of the article. So let's continue. So Hayaguchi hopes self-release films can be part of a different kind of system, one where filmmakers with guts, drive, and knowledge can work directly with regional and art house theater owners to showcase the stories made outside of the studio systems, which can fill in the gaps from merging Hollywood studios. Not quite sure what that means. I might have read that wrong. Yeah, and this is the thing. The quality of independent films is pretty good these days, and they may not book massive theaters like the big tentpole movies, but there are a lot of, these are multiplexes that are looking to fill seats, and they have regular foot traffic, just like any other business. There are people that show up weekly to the theater, not because they saw a commercial for a movie that they think is exciting, but they just like to go to the movie each week, and they show up and go like, well, what am I watching this time? If there isn't anything worth watching, they'll leave. But if there's something like, here's this indie film, it's, the occult, or it's a silent slapstick, or, whatever, that might interest them. It might be something that they wouldn't normally think to watch, but if there's nothing else and it looks enticing, they'll stay. They'll buy the popcorn, they'll buy the drink, and the movie theaters need that right now. So independent filmmakers do have an opportunity to take advantage of that if they, obviously make a professional presentation, present themselves as someone that is not going to be more trouble than they're worth to work with. But I think the theaters are probably going to be more willing to accommodate independent filmmakers for the sake of getting that steady flow of content that Hollywood just isn't providing. And with costs and unions and all that stuff kind of clogging up the works, it's probably going to be that way for a while. So all this seems to track for me. Anyway, let's see. It's easier said than done, obviously. Many distributors, major or indie, book out screens at theaters for multiple weeks, which can leave less space for self-distributed fare. Plus, even the most experienced filmmakers and theaters have far less resources to deal with the same problem as the big boys. How to stand out amongst a vast spectrum of entertainment options and in a pop culture landscape more atomized than ever. All I want is a chance to succeed or fail with the audience, not with some PA who's looking through 15,000 films at Sundance, okay, yeah, that came up, who maybe just turned away for a moment while he's eating his sandwich and missed the plot of the movie, and then I don't get in, Hayaguchi said. Then my hopes and dreams are gone because of some random Yahoo who stopped the first process in 100,000 processes that go into getting your movie in the theater. Yeah, it's like you got a lot of movies to watch you can check out for sure. Release the Beavers. Okay, so now we're getting more in territory of people I don't know. And Hayaguchi, I'm acquainted with. I've talked with him several times, and like I said, I'd like to have him on the show to ask him more about this. So I can't speak for him really beyond the few conversations we've had in this article. But so anyway, Release the Beavers. Since the start of its roadshow tour last year, Hundreds of Beavers, a black and white comedy, has grossed more than $320,000, a considerable haul given that the movie has never played on more than 17 screens in any single weekend. It has been fueled entirely by organic word of mouth without the aid of a distributor's marketing team, which is fantastic, and it probably speaks to that. I won't play the trailer. I don't know if I'll get hit with copyright, but I mean, a silent movie, that's in this day and age, people want some things that are different. They are willing to try. And word of mouth is still some of the best advertising you can get. I should also mention, it's kind of interesting. It's like after decades, we've got filmmakers kind of returning to the William Castle mode of film distribution. William Castle, if you're not familiar with him, in the 1950s used to make these low-budget horror movies, like 13 Ghosts is the one that stands out the most in my mind. But he'd work with people like Vincent Price. I think The Tingler was another one. He'd kind of be gimmicky, but he would literally put the reels of film in the trunk of his car and drive from city to city and arrange screenings. And he would get buzz going, and he'd get a bunch of kids to show up, and they would buy popcorn and scream at The Tingler or whatever it was and have a good time. Anyway, on with the article. It took 2 years for director Mike Cheslick and his team, led by producer Kurt Ravenwood, to bring Beavers to the big screen after its Fantastic Fest premiere in 2022. The team weighed multiple options and distribution offers, but settled on self-theatrical distribution with Ravenwood, who runs his own Milwaukee-based marketing firm, SRH, overseeing the promotional campaign. Marketing's expensive, and to be honest, my business model for filmmaking going forward is a large chunk of the budget will be allocated towards advertising, because if people don't know about your film, you really don't have any chance of standing out. I personally, I have a family and I've got a day job. I can't go from city to city touring my film around. But if you're, a single person, or maybe your kids have moved out, if you've got the energy for it, and you want to tour your film around, I think it's an excellent strategy. Not the only strategy, but an excellent one. It just seemed that if the main value that these distributors are bringing is marketing, well, our producer does that professionally, Cheslick told The Wrap. Like Hayaguchi and the Occult team, Cheslick and Ravenwood took hundreds of beavers to CinemaCon, showing theater owners the trailer for the madcap story of a fur trapper who gets into a feud with an army of beavers played by extras in furry costumes that destroyed his Applejack business. Incidentally, if you're not familiar with what CinemaCon is, it's kind of like a convention, an old school style business convention where the vendors that are showing up are all showing up for the movie theater owners show up to CinemaCon, and then there are vendors from everything from concessions, popcorn, the snacks, drinks, things like, some movies have bowling alleys and arcades and that sort of thing. So companies that do those things show up, and then the studios show up with their movies and show scenes from the movie, show trailers, have celebrities try and butter them up. But the word is that this last CinemaCon, the studios are going like, yeah, we're going to bring out new content, but they had barely anything to show, which is why the theaters are concerned and why they're looking towards the independents to make sure that anything is coming into their theaters. Anyway, back to the article. While the trip to Vegas helped build relationships, it wasn't until the team brought on Jessica Rosner, a former exec at art house distributor Kino International, that the Beavers team built the foundation for its theatrical release through her connections with cinema owners. And these are important things as well. Going to conventions or going to festivals these days, it's not about screening your films, it's about networking, getting to know these people who can help get your film out there. In fall 2023, hundreds of beavers set out on a Great Lake Roadshow tour through 14 independent theaters, including the Music Box, Chicago's crown jewel of indie cinema. Ravenwood and Rosner also booked stops at locations that knew how to reach out to their patrons, like the Cleveland Cinematheque, is that how you say that? And the Little Theater in Rochester. With the roadshow in place, Ravenwood and his team focused on building a suite of promotional materials that it could share with theaters to help get the word out. That's suite, not suit. We gave them a whole packet. There's the trailer. Here's all the copy you would use on social media. We were told by some theaters that there are smaller indie distributors who don't give them the level of marketing material we were giving them. Ravenwood said. Any dollar we made from the roadshow went back into the targeted social media marketing in whatever city we were playing next. That's a really good point as well. If you have promotional materials, you're working with theaters, always be available to them. Give them a little more than they're expecting, because most studios these days, they treat the theaters kind of poorly. Like, here's what you get, take it and you'll like it. The studios used to have the leverage. They used to be able to dictate how long the movies would play, how many showings a day. And they could really screw over the theaters and, get them over a barrel. And now the tables have turned. And so if they like you, if you are someone that they are happy to see, you're always available for them, you always have something for them, you're always, you answer your phone, you answer questions, always be someone people are happy to see when you show up in a room. That goes a long way. All right, back to the article. It paid off. The roadshow screenings held once a night ensured sellout crowds. That gave Ravenwood plenty of footage of audiences laughing and applauding the film and taking pictures with lead star Raylan Brixton Cold Twos. I think I'm saying that right. And fully costumed beavers in the lobby. That footage made it easier to book more theaters, and the film's momentum grew like the giant snowball Twos runs on top of in one of the dozens of gags and hundreds of beavers. It's a really good point. If people see other people having a good time, it makes them pay attention. Like, they want to join in. I think that's a constant. That's just human psychology. If this is why when you're in a shopping area and there are stores and you hear music coming out, like upbeat music, it kind of gets you going like, oh, what are they doing in there? That sounds fun. And then you go in. All right. This past March, even as it was released on video on demand, Hundreds of Beavers had its first Los Angeles screening at the Mel Royale, and has continued to book screenings at the Mel's locations while finding more audiences in new cities. Snowball effect, again, I like that. As for lessons for other indie filmmakers, Ravenwood and his team noted that while they still had to work hard to get the word out, it helped that Cheslick made a zany film that would easily catch the eye. My running joke is I'm not sure what's crazier, how they made the movie itself, or the distribution of the movie, because they're all extremely unique, Rosner said. But the idea of not needing to play something for 2 shows a day for a week is something that a lot of indie filmmakers and indie theaters should be looking more at. If people are coming in, if it's bringing in some extra money, more money than it costs, then it's worth it. Plus, these indie filmmakers are building their reputation. If they continue to be able to draw crowds and the crowds become more familiar with what they do, that turns into a following, and a following equals more guaranteed sales, so that future films will seem more of a sure thing to invest in, whether it be whoever's funding the film or the theaters themselves saying like, oh yeah, we know you and you drew a crowd from us last time, welcome back. Justin Cook, the publicist for Hundreds of Beavers, underscored the importance of having someone on the film team who is a marketing veteran like Ravenwood, or who is at least focused primarily on the film's promotion. There's value in that. Marketing is hard. I've done it myself before, and not to great success. Ideally, that job goes to the lead producer, but that's got to be the priority of someone on your core team, Cook said. You have to have someone on board as early as possible who focuses just on what happens after the movie's finished. I almost feel like you should consider the marketing person like one of your cast members. you need to cast this role. You need to have money for that cast member who just happens to not be in the film, but they're in front of everybody else getting the film out there. Okay, on the marquee with Christopher Nolan, Scott Monahan, reading new names on the fly. Scott Monahan understands how easy it can be for even the most driven indie filmmaker to let promotional work fall by the wayside. Getting a project financed, produced, and in the can is enough of a years-long Herculean effort before trying to get a foothold in the festival circuit. Yeah, you're exhausted after making a film. You kind of almost don't want anything to do with it after you're done. You need a break from it, but it's not the end of the process. By the time they're able to get any kind of distribution, if they do at all, filmmakers are just like, I'm tapped. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what he said. Just put the film online, he said. And I think that exhaustion is something that gets taken advantage of. Digital release is what everyone does, so just get it out there. I think the thing about that too is, like, digital release is still relatively new. The idea of getting your movie on Amazon, even for a few weeks for a while was like, wow, you can do that. And now you have something like Film Hub, or you have the distributor Indie Rights who can get it on, I think the Quantum Terror right now, my movie, is on like 20 different video on demand platforms. For a movie that I shot for $15,000 in my house with unknown actors, and it's my first film, I thought I was just going to print some DVDs and maybe get it on Amazon for a few weeks and that would be it. And now it's been over 2 years that it's out, 20 different video on demand platforms, including Apple TV, Plex, Tubi, Amazon Prime, Filmzy, Revi, the list goes on. I can't think of all of them at the moment. And it's international. People are seeing this movie all around the world. That's great for me as a first film. And I think, like I said, it's a new novel idea, and video on demand is simultaneously a new thing and something that's also kind of faltering already. So nobody really knew what that meant. I think the idea that we can go back to theaters is a valuable one. But I can't fault people for thinking like, oh, video on demand, that's perfect. Anyway, burnout was something that Monahan grappled with in his campaign to bring Anchorage to movie theaters. He wrote, directed, and starred in the film about a pair of drug addicts going on a continent-spanning journey from Florida to Alaska, hoping for a big payday with a trunk full of opioids, only for their plans to quickly go south. I've thought about starring in my own movie, but I'm kind of getting, I don't know, I'm going to be 48 soon. I don't know if anyone wants to look at me on the screen, but it's a way to save money on an actor. And I do enjoy acting. But man, going across country while directing and starring in your own film does sound exhausting. All right. From the moment he began making the film, Monahan knew he wanted to get the film in theaters. He made a deal with digital distributor Screen Media to release the film on video on demand in fall 2023, giving him time to arrange some form of theatrical release on his own beforehand. Monahan took Anchorage to the festival circuit and got some good reception before firing out as many emails as he could to theaters and bookers. Most went unanswered, but he caught the attention of a booker who offered to help get the film in 30 to 60 theaters in major cities nationwide. A British indie distributor, Bulldog, also expressed interest in releasing the film in UK cinemas. It seems like Monahan was looking for until he crunched the numbers. It seemed like what Monahan was looking for until he crunched the numbers. Among the expenses, the booker's fee of $10,000, $3,000 to get the film rated by the Motion Picture Associated, and around $150,000 for each digital copy of the film. $150 for each digital copy of the film and poster to send to a theater, which would total $4,500 to $9,000 depending on the number of theaters booked. After all the time and money spent to produce Anchorage, Monahan wasn't sure if he had enough left to make even this limited release possible. And with the UK release contingent on a US theatrical release, the anxiety mounted. It took some time, but I had to step back and ask myself, what kind of release do I, as the marketer, director, producer, writer, star of this film, have the bandwidth to really do? I just decided that I don't need to be in 60 cinemas. It's fine with just 3 or 4, he said. And this is really true. This is something, the industry of entertainment is atomized. We can make low-budget movies that cater to niche audiences and be profitable. I think the dream of becoming like super rich and the movie becoming world famous is, it can still happen, but it has to happen on its own through, just first making a movie for your target audience. You know who's going to like the kind of things that you like and be interested in what you have to say. So do that and just focus on making a profit, not becoming super rich. I think over time it's about building a library of films that will, turn into a long-term investment and will continue to gain fans. Monahan opted to self-release the film at indie cinemas in 3 major cities. The Limels in LA, I'm probably saying that wrong, the Music Box in Chicago, where his co-star Dakota Loesch is from, and the Cinema Village and Village East in New York, where the families of both men lived. That was enough to satisfy Bulldog with distribution. Anchorage at Curzon Cinemas in London. That was enough to satisfy Bulldog, the distributor, which distributed Anchorage at Curzon Cinemas in London. With the help of his co-producers Chad Schultz and Tyler Harrington of the Malt Shop Pictures, and Gia Rigoli and Vero Kompalik of Discordia, Monahan began his marketing campaign using the lessons he learned from promoting Anchorage during his festival tour. Among those lessons, create custom art for each city. The film screens in the priors. See, I'm going to say that sentence again. Create custom art for each city the film screens in and prioritize YouTube ads targeted in each city 3 weeks before the film would screen. I think that's a very valuable piece of advice right there. I'm going to keep that one in mind. The most important rule Monahan set for himself was to have a post-screening Q&A after each nightly screening on the tour. Ryan Ostrich, general manager of the Music Box, said that the willingness of hundreds of Beavers and Anchorage teams to attend their screenings elevated the film's over. This is written twice. Many self-released pictures he's booked. That extra step makes it feel like a true event that people want to be a part of, and for us, it makes it a lot easier to sell the film to people subscribe to our email newsletter, he said. And that's the thing is, when it's on video on demand, it's there whenever you want it. If it's coming to a theater with a Q&A, if you can make it into an event, people like to go to events. There's word of mouth of those, and the people that attend, they like to say, oh, you heard about that? I was there. There's a little bit of kind of prestige and status behind that. The people like to, have bragging rights that they were there for that event. That extra step makes it feel like a true event that people want to be a part of, and for us, it makes it a lot easier to sell the film to people subscribe to our email newsletter, he said. Did I read that already? Sorry. The rule paid off, especially at the Music Box, where Anchorage screened for a week and sold out a 70-seat auditorium each night. Ostrich said the other films screening at the Music Box that week, the opening week of Oppenheimer and the 6th week of Asteroid City. Now screening at the Music Box, Christopher Nolan, Wes Anderson, and Scott Monahan. Each day we screened in Chicago, there would be a line every day down the street. I would just walk down the line and talk to people, Monahan said. That week was fantastic, creating a personal experience for everyone who came, the kind that changes the concept of what the movies are, from content to engagement and from audience to community. That was the moment we worked so hard for and made it all worth it. Something new. 1 month after networking at CinemaCon, Peter Hyaguchi's dream of bringing the occult to the big screen is starting to come true. He has booked a trio of dates with post-screening Q&As in July and August with regional chains in Florida, Minnesota, and Michigan, which plans to reach out to nearby colleges in the summer and fall. One of those chains, Amenable Theaters, has offered Hyaguchi the chance to use any of its 29 locations to host a potential roadshow, and Florida-based Paragon Theaters is open to additional bookings depending on how the initial screening at its Naples location goes on July 1st. So if you happen to be in that area, go check out The Occult. We're always looking for ways beyond the traditional Hollywood model to get people excited for movie going. Imogen COO Trevor Baker said, a film like The Occult from an indie filmmaker that wants to look at distributing outside of that model is something any exhibitor would be crazy to not look at. When The Occult arrives for their weekday screening, it will share multiplex space with Deadpool and Wolverine and Despicable Me 4, as well as films from indie distributors like A24's Ty West, slasher film Maxine. The summer box office season, while not without its hits, is expected to be a bumpy one at theaters, as theaters are still waiting for production to ramp up after last year's strikes. And it's going to take some time still. You can't just... Hollywood got put on hold, and you're putting a whole economy on hold. And anyone that knows anything about economics knows that an economy is not something you can just turn on and off like a car, like a machine. That economy is wrecked, and it is going to take a long time to fix, especially when Hollywood has really blown a lot of the good faith that they had with audiences. So, yeah, it's going to be bumpy. With Paramount potentially becoming the next big Hollywood player to be bought up, Hyaguchi firmly believes that not only is there no going back to pre-pandemic normality, but that Hollywood is going to experience a free fall collapse similar to Detroit's automotive industry in the 1980s. Yeah, probably. I can't say for sure, but it certainly looks that way. It will be rebuilt, but I think it's going to be more and more decentralized, he predicted. I agree. Again, right now there's so few films being made in Hollywood, but there's more being made out there. It's just not being connected to the theaters and to the audiences. So that's the article. And yes, that's true. You know, I think my final word on this is that for a long time what happened was you had small studios, lots of studios in Hollywood, lots of distributors, lots of theaters, lots of opportunities to get stuff out there when filmmaking was more expensive. When it became more affordable for indie filmmakers, there was a lot more content, most of it not very good, admittedly. But the movie theaters, you know, they became too reliant on the blockbuster. And then they switched to video on demand, and they annihilated, like, I don't know, all but 5% of their physical media sales, which was a big way of making your money back on a movie if it didn't make money in its initial run. And now video on demand is turbulent, and there's content everywhere. But what's happened was everything got kind of, what do you call it? It's like gentrification. there's small towns that get a reputation for being lovely places to visit. They've got mom and pop restaurants, live entertainment, like all this great stuff. And then it gets popular, and then the big companies, corporations, franchises, they hear about it, and then they spend a bunch of money moving in and making deals with the politicians, so the politicians favor what they're doing, and don't give the same incentives and tax breaks to the mom and pop places, so they all get crowded out. And then suddenly, where there's like a popular Greasy Spoon or a Roadhouse with a stage with popular acts, like then there's a KFC and a McDonald's and a Chick-fil-A and a Target and a Walmart, and then it just becomes like every other place. And that's kind of what Hollywood did, is to crowd out all this stuff. And now that Hollywood is collapsing, these smaller businesses, smaller production companies, they're all coming back in. But the thing is what I think is important is they need to be incentivized so that they can grow into a viable option. And I think if the theaters are smart, they will start incentivizing them, because they've realized that Hollywood was not too big to fail. And also, the independents aren't going to, like I said before, try and put them over a barrel over theatrical releases and, fleece them. The movie theaters kind of got used to being fleeced by the big studios, especially Disney. They have an opportunity to grow smaller acts, so to speak. And if they get some of these people turn out to be good, and these movies are good, and they bring in a certain amount of money. I'm not saying they'll bring in the biggest money, but maybe some consistent, reliable money on top of what their other staples are. If they incentivize that economy, and if the government's smart enough to not step in and trying to regulate everything so that Hollywood always has that advantage over smaller businesses, you could see a great resurgence in entertainment economy, and it'll be much different than anything that we're used to. And that also makes it kind of scary for people, because if you're not used to a certain thing, that means that you have to kind of pay closer attention. You can't just sit back and let the system that's been built kind of do its thing, which is what they did before, and that's where we are now. So anyway, I hope all that was interesting. I hope I didn't butcher the article too hard or butcher anyone's names too badly. But I am enthusiastic about this. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if it's going to work, but I definitely think it's worth investigating. So thanks for watching, and be sure to like, subscribe, share this video. And I will be back soon, hopefully with an interview with Peter and some other stuff that I think you're going to find really interesting, including filmmaking tutorials and all sorts of good stuff. All right, bye.